Hi! Today I am going to demonstrate the setup for a log cabin weave. The log cabin weave is created by alternating colors in the warp and alternating colors in the weft. In this video, we are going to look at how we can set up the warp in an effective manner. In this demonstration, I have chosen to use a bright pink and a bright blue yarn to provide greater contrast. I will warp the loom for a 1-inch section of bright blue, a 4-inch section of log cabin, and a 1-inch section of bright pink. In this overhead view, you will see me warping the pink section as per normal, pulling the warp yarn through each slot opening in the heddle. In the log cabin section, the number of pink warp ends are half the total number of warp ends. Hence, instead of pulling the warp yarn through each slot opening, I shall be pulling it through the alternate slot openings. From this overhead view, you should see larger spaces between the pink warp yarn in the log cabin section compared to the all pink section. A view from the back of the loom allows you to see what it looks like in the heddle. Once I am done with the log cabin section, I will tie off the pink yarn. With the blue yarn, I will start from the all blue section, pulling the warp yarn through each slot opening for that section. Once I reach the log cabin section, I will pull the blue yarn through the slots that I have skipped earlier. The blue yarn will cross the pink yarn on the tie-on rod, but that is not of concern as the yarns are crossing each other across a relatively small width on the loom. As long as it is less than 1 inch, it generally will not cause you significant distress during the weaving process. At the end of the log cabin section, we will tie off the blue yarn. As you can see, we will have a section of the warp that is all pink, one section that is all blue, and a section in between that has alternate pink and blue warp ends. You will go ahead to wind this warp up on the back beam, as you would any other warp. Now that the warp has been wound on the back beam, I am going to show you how we thread the heddles for log cabin. To keep things neat, I have tied the warp ends into 1-inch bundles. It also prevents any warp accidents that you may have with pets, children, or other curious adults. I am going to start by threading the pink section. This is just the usual process of taking one of the two warp ends in the slot opening and threading it through the adjacent hole opening. In my case, I am threading the hole opening to the right. Some of you might do this by pulling one warp end out from the back and threading it, like I am doing in the first two sets. My personal habit is to hold each pair of warp ends taut and use the warping hook like a crochet hook. Pull one of the warp ends through the hole. Go ahead and try and see if you like this method. Now we will proceed to the log cabin section. Besides alternating warp colors, the other distinctive feature of the log cabin weave is that the order of the alternating colors switches on a regular basis. In the first inch, I begin with pink on the right and alternate it with blue. In the second inch, I will begin with blue and alternate it with pink. The next 2 inches will repeat this sequence. Since this warp is set at 8 ends per inch, we should weave a similar sequence in the weft, where we will change the alternating sequence every 8 picks. Let us proceed to set up the first inch of the log cabin. Recall that the warp end on the extreme right will be pink, and this will go into a hole opening as my earlier all pink section had ended on a slot. Since the pink and the blue yarns will alternate in the log cabin setup, all the pink yarns in this section will be in the hole openings, while all the blue yarns will go in the slots. The most effective way for me to set this up is to work with a pair of pink yarns and a pair of blue yarns. I will remove the pair of pink yarns and one of the blue yarns from their slot. This leaves me with just one blue yarn in the first slot of the log cabin section. Using my warping hook, I will pull the other blue yarn through the second slot, and once that is done, I will pull the pink yarns through each of the corresponding holes. I will repeat this again with the remaining 4 warp ends of this first inch. Pinks and a single blue yarn are pulled out of their slots towards the back of the loom. I will pull the single blue through the slot vacated by the pink yarns. I will then pull one pink yarn through each hole opening. Once I've completed this inch, I should see pink yarns in the holes and blue yarns in the slot. In the next inch, we will begin with the blue yarn on the extreme right. This means that the blue yarns will be in the hole, while the pink yarns will be in the slots. Again, I will work with a pair of pink yarns and a pair of blue yarns. But this time, I will pull a single pink yarn and both blue yarns out of their slots towards the back of the loom. I will then pass that single pink yarn back through the slot vacated by the blue yarn before pulling one blue yarn through each hole opening. I shall repeat that for the next pink and blue pairs, completing this second inch. Once I have completed this inch, I should see blue yarns in the holes and pink yarns in the slots. This is the reverse of what we had seen in the earlier inch. I am going to show you how it looks like from the back of the loom for the next 2 inches. For this next inch, I am working with pink yarns in the holes and blue yarns in the slots. Therefore, I am pulling 2 pink yarns and 1 single blue yarn towards the back of the loom. I will then bring that particular blue yarn through the open slot and the pink yarns through the holes. You will see that my hook pulls downwards when I am working with the slots, and my hook moves horizontally when I am working with the holes. For the final inch, I am working with blue yarns in the holes and pink yarns in the slots. Therefore, I am pulling out 2 blue yarns and 1 pink yarn towards the back of the loom. I will pull this pink yarn through the open slot and the 2 blue yarns through the holes. As the yarns are now nearer the camera, you should be able to see how my hook is pulling them through more clearly. Finally, I will complete my threading with the all blue section. Look at how I am holding each pair of warp threads taut. By holding my thumb and index finger apart from each other, I'm able to push one of the warp threads down and keep the other horizontal. This allows my warp hook to catch easily on the horizontal warp yarn and pull it through the hole. It is quite hard to describe this in person, so feel free to pause, rewind, and repeat this part of the video as many times as you need to figure this out. If we have the opportunity to meet, I will be more than happy to demonstrate this to you in person. Now that my warp ends have been rightly threaded and tied on, here is what it would look like on the front of the loom. I'm counting out the log cabin warp ends to show you how we have the colors set up. The best way to check is to lift and lower your heddle and to look for the color patterns that is shown on the screen. I am also showing you how the warp ends may be slightly crossed at the back, but all you need to do is to push this twist towards the back of the loom each time you advance the warp. It should not give you too much difficulties during the weaving. There you have it, the loom is all set up for a log cabin weave. Thank you for watching and happy weaving.